have a passport or a documentation to be in a certain space, you're not allowed to work there. So the system has always been there in terms of how capitalism would exploit those who are underprivileged or undeveloped to exploit their resources and themselves, which started way back during colonial times when if you were coming whether from KwaZulu-Natal or Cape Town, if you're coming to Johannesburg, you'd be regarded as someone who's an outsider or a foreigner, which is the system which capitalism does, because the main purpose of capitalism is based on what they call a shareholder facility, where they only care about those who own whatever means of production there is, which is not necessarily compared to what socialism is based on, which is stakeholder ownership, to say those who've got a stake in it, work for it, are also supposed to benefit. So with the issue now, with the lessons of what you guys, because the main message I'm hearing now is that we need to figure out how do we have solidarity to fight against the system. So one of the observations I've noticed, because I'm a permanent resident, I'm actually a migrant, I've stayed in South Africa for 17 years, this is my 17th year. I've worked, I even became an artist. So at some point you understand that it's not the issue of the people you are with, it's the system which you are fighting against, which is typical of any other African country, which makes anybody a migrant, which is more or less what happens within the communities ourselves, that we all want to come to Joburg, to the industrial firms, but then they place us somewhere where we won't benefit anything. Like, we'd stay in the communities where they are mining it, but then they take the resources and come develop where they are, but not concerned about where they are taking those resources from. Right? So the issue of capitalism, the only way we have to face it, particularly, is in the terms of that we have to understand that it works on a divide and conquer mentality. So the moment, even if you are gathered as much as this, we should know they are already trying, they are actually having their own class right now somewhere, figuring out how do we separate these people, so that if they are busy fighting amongst themselves, they don't have time to fight us. Which is what's happening post-COVID, when the economy affected everybody, whether you were poor or you had money, but then they understood that the working class people, at some point they will unite. And then when the poor unite, they'll eat the rich. And this is what happened with the looting last year, when nobody was thinking, it was not xenophobic or anything. They were not looting spazas in the locations. They were going to the white monopoly capital establishments like malls. And that's when they understood that the only way we can disrupt you guys is then to look for a scapegoat of somebody whom you can easily identify as your enemy. Then now we're going to label him a foreigner, right? Undocumented. And then to a point where you get those kind of movements which are divisive, they'll get funding. You know, like Operation Dudula and the South Africa First, and the truck drivers thing which is happening. So at some point, in terms of to say how do we go forward, it's not necessarily of only looking at how do we solidify ourselves. How do we figure out what our differences are, so that we know each other, so that if they try to separate us based on them, we say that's not the issue at the moment. The issue is you. Who are you coming to say it's only these people who deserve these jobs? Like, for instance, I used to work at a construction company where I couldn't become a member because I was not a citizen. But you'd understand that at some point you'd have two unions within the same company, and then they'll make the unions fight amongst each other. So to a point where now there's no solidarity in terms of like how do you address the wage discrepancies, whatever grievances the people have. So more than anything else, we have also to focus on what being social is and what a society is. It starts with the simple phrase of what makes us African, which is Ubuntu, Ubuntu, Nabantu. So in terms of, if we always focus on that kind of solidarity, to say, no matter what is happening, no matter what grievances we have against each other, we should always remember that without you, I can never go far. So we from Kopanong, Africa Against Xenophobia, it's more or less, it's a campaign. And we're trying to find a way where we can take the narrative to say this is not about Who is it who's crying out? Who is it is not complaining? What is it are they crying about? You understand? Because if anybody is a migrant, everybody is a migrant. Nobody comes from anywhere. And documentation-wise, it's a capitalist system of identifying you as a product within yourself. What resource are you? That's why they say bring your CVs. The same thing as saying bring the measurements of the minerals in place. So, in other words, all I want to say is that I'm happy to be part of this, and we've got members from CACS also. And the message is always to say, if anybody has a struggle, you actually just have to support in solidarity with them, not necessarily our own. If anybody is within this other side of the fence, so that if there are many numbers of them, the enemy is visible, that who is it? Because if we are protesting, all of us in the streets, we are not in the complexes, are we? So the enemy will be visible at that point. Because all I know is that if not enough good people do right, evil will always prosper. And we all know what is the root of all evil? Money. And that's what defines capitalism. Otherwise, thank you very much, and I enjoy to be with you guys.